book Interrupted has been nominated for a People's Choice Podcast Award. We'd like to thank our fans for all your support.
Mind, body, and soul. Information is the goal. Try to learn something new without being distracted.
Leah hurt her back and her neck. They're like crazy hurt, like maybe going to the hospital, having problem breathing hurt.
Oh my God.
Right, so
Yes.
she's not coming today. Kim, you start because it's your book.
This is funny because I'm terrible with the schedule. So I was like, oh, it's me. It's me this week. So the book that I chose is From the Ashes by Jesse Thistle. I feel like because this book is, well, I guess I feel like in general, we should probably acknowledge the land that we come from, because most of it is unceded Indigenous territory of some description or another. So I'm on the unceded territory of the Silko-Kahnawake Nation people. So the way that I found this book, I think I kind of like the story because I was listening to the CBC one day, and there was an interview with a person, and he was talking about his journey, and he had gone from having a difficult childhood through homelessness, a heavy drug addiction, to now was coming out the other end, completing a degree. And he was speaking to, and he was probably promoting this book, but I caught it at the end. I didn't catch his whole name. I really, really enjoyed his story and how he spoke about it. And I was like intrigued. And all I did was I got my phone out and I made a note in my phone, and all I knew was Jesse. So I was like, Jesse, and I'll figure it out. Like, I'll Google it, like whatever. And then time went by. And then I was taking this workshop done by this amazing group of people. The organization's called IndigenEYEZ, and they do a lot of workshops where I guess the focus is toward reconciliation, and it's for settlers and Indigenous people, and you come together and like it's really hard to describe the experience, but it's really super wonderful, and you just kind of explore how to be a better ally, or how to further the cause or the mission of reconciliation. I got drawn to it because when I read the Truth and Reconciliation Act and like knew that the hot phrase was reconciliation, I was kind of skeptical because I was like, okay, yeah, like I hear the government writing it all out and listing all the things and whatever else, but like, what does it actually mean? Like, what are we actually going to do? And so I found that organization through my search to try to figure out how I could actually accomplish the act of reconciliation, like what that looks like on an individual level. So then in that organization, well, in those workshops, I met this girl who is Métis, and she was talking about this book. And then I was like, wait a minute. Like I recognized somehow from the story that it was the book, my long lost book that I couldn't find. I couldn't find anything by just searching Jesse. Like it wasn't enough information. So, and I just couldn't find anything. And she was talking about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, is the author's first name Jesse? And she was like, yes, it's Jesse Thistle, whatever. And I was like, yes. So that's the longest version ever of why I picked this book.
I like it.
Oh, I like it. I like all the details. Isn't it interesting when books like that come into our lives? Mine was The Four Agreements. I must have heard about it for a good few years, and have it like almost moments where I almost engaged in it, and then I got to a point where I'm like, this is ridiculous. I wonder if I ever am gonna get the book. And then yeah, you just finally, if you're meant to read it, it comes your way. And I love how all those pieces came in, and you just happened to go to the IndigenEYEZ and just happened to be speaking with the girl, and she just happened to be saying the right words that allowed you to go ding. And it makes the book so much more special that it's like you two found each other when you were supposed to, when you were ready to do the read. That's awesome.
Yeah, I love stuff like that, like people or whatever coincidences that feel like it's the universe or whatever you want to call the unknown force, like driving you on your path the way you're supposed to go. I love it.
Yeah, it's so awesome. Yeah, I feel the same when it was finally my time to read the Four Agreements. I kid you not, like the book, it was as if it was like illuminated from like divine lighting shining it, and it was like raising itself up to me. And I was like, it's been like 4 years. I was like, my time is now. Like I just love it. So like perfect. But like honestly, I'm not exaggerating. It was as if the book was like under this spotlight. I was like, I see you. It's our time.
And you're like, the light is too bright, though. I can't read the words. Turn it out a bit.
I like that same experience when you're looking like to connect to the universe and you just grab a book. And I'm going to think right now, it could be actually any book, but sometimes it might be like a book, you know, like Women Who Run with the Wolves, for example. And you just open the book and whatever you read, this is probably kind of like how horoscopes work too, but whatever you read, it's relevant, you know, and you're like, this is exactly what I needed to hear at this moment. Like, how crazy is that? And you look around like, the world is magical.
Sure. It's like the bat. It was absolutely, I couldn't agree more. It is one of the
Book interrupted.
Okay, so my interruption is that I now dream in a COVID world. It's so weird. I'll be in the middle of a dream, like I dreamt last night that I was in an Uber with a whole bunch of people, I don't know. And then in the middle of the dream, I was like, why are people not wearing masks? What are people doing together? And I'm freaking out in the middle of the dream that people are not wearing masks and that we're congregated in groups. It's so weird. I don't know. Do you guys do that as well? I asked my mom, and she said she does that too, that in the middle of a dream, she'll just like have to grab a mask and put it on, or I don't know. So I wonder if that's everybody. Does everybody dream in COVID? Like as if have to do things for COVID? I don't know. Let me know.
Book interrupted.
This makes me think of something I just watched actually recently. There's an Indigenous woman, like you, I didn't catch the beginning of this like interview she was doing. I caught the end. So I don't even know what her name is and why she was being interviewed. But what she said was that, I guess she has an organization, and people often after her lectures would contact her about how they would have their DNA tested to see if they were Indigenous because they had a great-great-grandmother, they thought, and blah, blah, blah. So they could be, and she's like, and normally I tell them where they can go and stuff, but to be quite honest, that's not the Indigenous way. Just because your DNA is Indigenous doesn't mean you're part of our community. You need to, like, so she's like, community is different. People need to accept you into the community. It doesn't have to do with DNA with us. It has to do with like being part of a community. It's not individualistic. It's us as a whole. Yeah. So she was trying to explain that, like, it's not thinking of just yourself, right? Like me as an individual. Anyways.
Well, what I do know is that most Indigenous cultures are informed by the acknowledgement that everything is interconnected. It's like often conceptualized as a giant web. There is no thing that I do that doesn't somehow create a reaction or effect for everything and everyone around me, from like a rock to an animal to the trees to the lake, right? Everything is connected. And so the acknowledgement of that connection then really informs their place in the world. Like I think I might've said this before, but it always resonated with me. So I'll just say it again. There is more of a perspective of we have responsibilities than we have rights.
Yeah.
So, right. Yeah. And so I have a right. I feel like that's really individualistic, right? Like, what are my rights? Like me. But I have a responsibility is me playing outward to everything around me, everything I'm connected to. I have a responsibility. And so I think that is relevant to what you were saying, Sarah, in terms of like individualistic versus collective.
Mm-hmm. Have you guys started to read the book? Because there's a part I just started, and there's a part at the beginning about kind of everything connected and how He's out with his grandmother, and they're picking berries for something, and the mosquitoes swarm, and he starts swatting them away, and she says, no, you don't swat them away, they're just part of creatures. And so she says something and basically says, like, we are we have a job to do, please let us do this job, and then you can come back later. And so the swarm of mosquitoes or whatever goes away. And I just thought that was so beautiful, the idea of, because you think about mosquitoes as these really annoying things, but it's like, well, no, every single thing plays a role. And if we all thought of it that way, we would all just be better off, I think. I don't know, in my mind. But it was a beautiful part of the book.
I really like that part of the book too, a lot.
I was watching an interview with Jesse Thistle on YouTube yesterday, and he's given some recommendations on. He was talking about the medical system, and he touched on that. He said, in Indigenous culture, we see that we are all related. Like, everything is related, and we need our doctors. I'm paraphrasing here, but basically, we need the doctors to believe the same thing, that we're all part of it, rather than, what happens sometimes is that Indigenous people are treated as other when they go into the medical system, which is why they don't necessarily get good medical treatment, for example. But anyway, I hadn't looked very much into this book until yesterday when we got home from camping. And I agree with you, Kim, like, listening to him talk, he's he draws you in.
Like, I want to say that he's like wise, like you can hear
his experiences. Well,
and I feel like, and I don't know if this is, correct me if I'm wrong, or if I'm saying something uncomfortable or inappropriate, but like a lot of we're all related, with the interconnectedness, there's also like the relation to the future and the relation to the past. So there's this heavy resource that comes in an Indigenous culture from the ancestors and their story, like everything that they learned. So like, again, it's not this individual moment in time, right? They're thinking into the future for their children, and they're drawing from the past, from their ancestors. And I feel like when he speaks, that's what the chemistry or attraction is to someone who is non-Indigenous. It's very what's the word, like textured. I can hear like his ancestors, like I can hear his teachings as he's embraced his, because I think originally he may have rejected, if I recall some of the passages in the book, like his heritage, because he got the impression, just like how Black people, right, the whole white is right and everything else, right, like he took that internal teaching as well, growing up in this society. And so I think originally he rejected his heritage and his culture, but in embracing it, I hear all those, I don't know if it's all the voices of his ancestors, but the depth of his spirit seems to be more than just the spirit of one person, right? Like it's that integrated and collective kind of wisdom. Like when you were speaking there, the word that came to me is the wisdom, the way that he speaks. It's such deep knowing. And it's just, and I think it also resonates with us because even when I was doing, because again, the whole reconciliation thing, I'm trying to learn, I'm trying to understand, because I want to get involved, because to hear the story, like the true stories of Indigenous people in Canada is enraging. And so when I learned the history, it's just so true. Like, and I don't mean the terrible experience of Indigenous people. I mean, learning into their history and their culture, everything that they thought and still do think, like the way that they practice their life is just so simple and true. And I just feel like if we didn't, like if the country wasn't colonized, we would do, like, there wouldn't be global warming. Like, just the way that they perceive and treat their surroundings, everything. And it's so like, I just feel like there's so much to learn from Indigenous cultures and people and ways of life and everything else, that's what motivates me forward. And that's brings me back to why I would pick a book like this, because I want everyone to understand how much knowledge they have, because it's been undermined and undervalued since contact. So, and he's just one single representation of it. And what a story of resilience, right? Like what is he going for now, Sarah? His doctorate or something? Remember he's busy because he's doing his
Yeah, his PhD. Because he was going to come on. I had contacted him and his wife. And, here's a little thing. I won't say it until the next episode or when we're closer to the end. But because I emailed his wife, there's a little...
Well, you got a spoiler, a teaser?
As I'm reading it, yeah, I got a teaser because I know his wife's name and I was reading the book and I was like, oh!
Oh.
I think it is. Anyway, because I've read almost... I'm a third way through the book. I was trying to not read it, but I read it anyway. Now he's in the middle of writing his dissertation, so he's not taking any more.
He's busy.
Book clubs, right? He's busy.
Yeah. He's a little busy.
He's a little busy, yeah. In the book, he does, Kim, because I've read a little bit further, there's one part where he tells when he was younger, because like you said, he realized that he was being treated different. So he told some kids at school that he was Italian.
And then he embraced all of the negative stereotypes, right? He's like, well, I'm the crazy Indian. And that's like the beginning of his journey. Like that's how he formed an identity for himself. And that's like the beginning of his addiction kind of rabbit hole too, is really embracing that identity that somebody else gave him, you know? Like it's just so fucked up.
He's such a good storyteller, because as you're reading it, that's why I think I've read so much of the book, is because it's kind of like how Untamed was like bite-sized. So he kind of bite-sizes the stories of his life, and it like slowly is sewing it together is the only way I could describe it. And it's very hard to stop reading the book. It's kind of like how Untamed was like bite-sized. So he kind of bite-sizes the stories of his life, and it like slowly is sewing it together is the only way I could describe it. And it's very hard to stop reading the book. Like I literally had to be like, I have to stop reading because we have to have dinner. Like I just read it nonstop yesterday. Like I do something and I come back and then read another chapter, and then I do something and come back and read another chapter. Like anyway, yeah, it's a real, so far, like he's an excellent storyteller, and it's of his own life too. So
there's the authenticity stamp side of it, and also not just that he's a great storyteller, but I haven't started the book, but based on this interview, I get the impression that part of his mandate is to educate other people, and so maybe that's part of what we're picking up too, is that we want to be educated, and he's there telling us everything in a very very effectively, because he's such a good storyteller, and
he's like telling it as those things happen to his life. It's like you're reading it and you're like, that's what, you're so angry or upset. Like it's a roller coaster ride of his life. I'm only up to him being a child, right? I haven't even gotten into the other part yet. And the thing is, it's like he's just painting you a picture of his existence, right? So it makes you go on this roller coaster.
If you've enjoyed these video highlights, listen to the full episode on our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember to like and subscribe and ring that bell to be notified when new episodes are published. Find out more by going to www.bookinterrupted.com.
Book Interrupted.